one has to understand that the Rio conference in '92 was called the UN Conference on Environment and Development. It wasn't a conference on sustainable development. It was really about how do you combine taking care of the environment and deal with development.
We were dragged into the twofold approach, the philosophical approach that the world was going into a crisis, which brought an extraordinary amount of responsibility on the political representatives that were gathered there in '92. And at the other time, on the other side, you had the civil society outcrying for change.
Business was not on the radar screen. Even if we had been asked by the UN and Maurice Strong to provide our perspective and create a council of business leaders to give an input.
They approved far more than anyone could possibly have expected in the Agenda 21, which was an agenda for the 21st century, which would put us on the pathway to sustainability, a statement of principles, agreement on a climate change convention, and a convention on biodiversity, and setting the stage for a convention on desertification. The problem has been what happened afterwards, which is not enough.
I would say that build-up to Rio Plus 10 was, on the whole, there was a great deal of pessimism, because the feeling was that there was a certain high in Rio, and there was a feeling that the promises of Rio were not being met, particularly in terms of finance and so on. And to some extent, Johannesburg was had that inheritance of a sense that we have not really succeeded in implementing the Rio agenda. Therefore, the focus was on implementation. It's only when we got to Johannesburg, where the summit was explicitly called the World Summit on Sustainable Development. There was no ifs and buts about it. It was explicitly called, and I think South Africa played a major role in getting that acceptance.
The social dimension started to come up, and there was the discussion around corporate social responsibility.
I think the big change at Johannesburg was that people began to realize that business was an absolutely essential element.
The NGO community started to change the way they were looking at things.
Within the NGO community, you had this definite bifurcation of NGOs, some of whom were happy to work with business, and some of whom continued to simply attack business and are fundamentally anti-business.
We are now coming 10 years later, and the world is clearly at the moment on an unsustainable path. We are not doing enough to maintain a sustainable world going forward.
My Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, said Rio Plus 20 is one of the most important meetings in the history of the United Nations. He's not exaggerating, because he knows the seriousness of the issue. So therefore, we should, through your media, through, other friends, let's shout, let's make noises, let's shake the world, wake up. This is time to do the job.